I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of frozen fingers and broken cameras. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you, years of failure stitched together by a narrow thread of success. A pair of eyes trained to see the world in rectangles, and a mindset to tackle the most ultimate of all photography tests. The backyard? In a lot of ways, photography has become heavily intertwined with travel. So much so that sometimes we as photographers don't even take out our cameras unless we're somewhere, quote unquote, beautiful. Now, of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to photograph iconic, majestic gems of the world. After all, as National Geographic photographer Jim Richardson said, if you want to be a better photographer, stand in front of more interesting stuff. And I think there's definitely truth to that. But I also think that when it's easy pickings and you're somewhere so beautiful that it's hard to take a bad photo, there's very little challenge there, and it doesn't really promote much experimentation or growth, which is why I think we ought to turn our attention towards another important photography proverb. I've struggled to find the original quote and author, so I can't exactly repeat it verbatim, but it goes along the lines of, a good photographer can make great images in their backyard.
I'm not very good yet.
So I don't know about you, but I don't really shoot a whole lot of images in my backyard, partially because I'm rarely here, but also because when I am here at my mom's house, as I am now, I rarely feel compelled to get out the camera and experiment in the backyard like I used to when I was a kid. And that got me thinking, is the quality of my photography only better now because I shoot, as Richardson calls it, more interesting stuff? Or is it because I'm actually a better photographer who has honed his craft and his technical proficiency and trained his eye to be more discerning of good composition? So whether for good or for bad, for glory or embarrassment, we're going to find out what kind of images I can create in this backyard and see whether or not I'm as good of a photographer as I hope I am. Well, if this just lays all my photographic shortcomings bare and entirely discredits me as a photographer, then it was nice knowing you. All right. So when I planned this little challenge, I had ambitions of getting up early and capturing the sunrise, or what little of sunrise you can capture from a backyard in suburbia. And well, obviously that didn't work out. The marine layer had other plans this morning. But I figured, I'm already up, so I might as well try and make some pictures. But I couldn't come up with anything I wanted to shoot. I think at the time I was too hung up on the idea I had in my head of brilliant morning light and bright colors, and I ended up just walking around, metering a few scenes, and experimenting with a few compositions on the viewfinder app on my phone. And looking back at the footage now, I kind of like the look of the fog, and I wish I shot some of it, but I just wasn't feeling it at the time. Eventually, however, the sun did come out. Let's be real. Is there any better way to start off a backyard photo challenge than with a photo of a fake rock? Probably. But we're gonna do it anyways. Gotta be careful where you walk here, because this is where all of the mines are. When I initially came out here this morning in the middle of the fog, and I was trying to like pick out compositions with my phone and prepare for the day ahead, I was getting kind of nervous. I was like, this is going to be harder than I thought. I can't really find any good compositions, nothing really speaking to me. And then the moment that the light came out, I realized that, you can just kind of follow the light, and that even if you are somewhere as ordinary as a backyard, the light's going to fall on things that can pique your interest, and really all you have to do then is just try and frame it in an interesting or well-ordered or, I don't know, any sort of way that pleases you. So I guess that's the only thing that's carrying me through right now, because I don't feel like any of the compositions that I'm doing right now are utterly stellar or anything, but I'm just kind of following the light and seeing where that takes me. Let's keep going. So this is Lola. You might remember her from the last video. Not much has changed since then, other than she's decided that she's so hungry that she needs to eat her own legs. Silly. Hello. Starving. Okay, so since the sun's a little bit high in the sky right now, I thought it might be a good time to do a little bit of learning and experimenting. So I went online and I found the top 10 ways to improve your photography. So let's take a look at some of these. Number 1, choose a strong focal point. Follow the rule of thirds. Use leading lines. Put some thought into your perspective. Create depth. Frame your shot. Really? Fill the frame. Look for patterns and symmetry and then disrupt them. Pick up a tripod. Upgrade your gear. You're kidding me with these, right? There's really nothing worse than generic advice. left the backyard because this is kind of technically the backyard. Lola. So I like some of the images that I made, but overall I think that I probably could have done better. You know, I went into it with the wrong mindset, you know, thinking, you know, I had to make all the images perfect, and I think I overthought my way out of a lot of more interesting but maybe not as aesthetically pleasing compositions. So there wasn't as much experimenting going on, which is kind of what I was really going for. I had a better time recording B-roll video clips for this project because, you know, I had no expectation of making any of those good. If a clip was bad, then I would just cut it entirely. So this kind of reminds me of an experiment conducted by professor and photographer Jerry Uelsman. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name, but anyways, so in his film photography class, no less, he divided the class in half, and one half was put into the quality group, and their grade was going to be only assessed on the caliber of the work that they made, where the other half of the class was put into the quantity group, and they were only going to be assessed based on the amount of photos that they took. And what they found at the end of the term was actually that the best photos all came from the quantity group, where the quality group had just kind of sat around deliberating about perfection. The quantity group was out there trying new things, learning from their mistakes, and just doing. So that's kind of what this experiment felt like for me on the video and photo sides, respectively. I mean, I learned a lot of things. I learned that, you know, good light is important. Yeah, beautiful things, they're important too. And it's also important to be inspired to take photos. But I also think that, yeah, it's also important to challenge yourself and to stretch your capacities in a place that, you know, probably doesn't inspire you to photograph it. Like the backyard you've inhabited for over a quarter of the century now, which is kind of crazy to think about. You know, I learned a lot about the photographic grooves that I fall into by default. I started to see the patterns in the way that I make imagery. And if there's one thing that I learned most of all, it's probably that, you know, I want to experiment more. There really is like an endless world of untapped imagery in this backyard if only I were to open myself up to different subgenres of photography and styles of photography, from, you know, portraiture to light painting to, I don't know, treating the backyard as like a studio environment, deliberately crafting scenes and using it as a way of telling stories. So, I mean, I'm a little burnt out on my backyard now, so I'm definitely not keen to do any of that in the near future, but yeah, I am really glad that I tried this little experiment, and I hope it encourages you to do something similar. All right, that's all I got today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.